Welcome to tonight's live stream. I am going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know that the stream is getting started. I'm going to wait for a couple more people to come into the stream, and then I'll get started. Okay, now that I've let everybody on social media know that the stream is on, I want to let everybody know that we are in the last hours of the John Haynes Kickstarter, and this is a live, Ashura. I am live on the air right now. So these are the last few hours of the John Haynes Kickstarter, and we have about 7 hours to go on the Kickstarter with 86 backers. And I'm hoping that maybe we could get to 100 by then, but if we don't, that's okay. But we've had again, this Kickstarter was a fun project to do, and we are in the last hours for you to get your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door on Kickstarter. So if you want to get your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door, put in your pledge right now, because this is your last chance to do so by clicking the link in the chat. So this is your last chance to get your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door. And today I just got my copy from the printer. Now I was surprised because I was expecting to get this copy of the comic on Monday. However, I think it's a blessing that I got it today. So I've got my copy of the John Haynes comic in the packaging that I got from the printer, and I'm gonna show everybody it right now. Now, this is what you're gonna get when you put in a pledge for a paper copy. You're gonna get a comic that looks just like this. Now, I was originally gonna go with another printer who was going to give me a floppy type comic, but I didn't really like the way their whole file transfer system thing was a bit of a headache, one. And two, this printer gave me a better, I believe would give the readers a better experience as related to the product. The complete page count of the story is 32 pages Ashura, and it is 4 pages of front matter and ads. So the total page count is 35 pages on the full John Haynes comic. Now, I wanted to give readers a fun reading experience, and I believe a higher quality reading experience. That's why I went with this paperback style for the whole comic, and I thought this would be a higher quality product to give to readers. Now, the interiors of this book have some really high grade paper, and I really love the paper here. It's really high quality, and the inks and stuff are really nice. So I want to give somebody something similar to a paperback and something a little bit like a manga. So I wanted to give every reader who put in a pledge something of the highest quality so they could have a great reading experience and have a comic that could last for years. So the paper inside of this book, again, is of extremely high quality. I mean, I want you guys to take a look at the interiors here as related to the printing. And these are not any sort of thin pages. These are nice, thick pages. So this book will be one that's going to last you a long time. So I'm hoping that everybody sees the quality of this book. And I'm hoping they're as happy as I am, because you've got, this book is very high quality as I see it. So again, I want to give readers the best experience and give them experience that will get them excited about picking up a possible future SJS Direct comic. So this is what the standard edition looks like. I still have to put in the orders for the variant and the retro variant, but I wanted to get a look at things, and I really am very happy with the quality here that I got from the printer. So everybody, this is what you're going to get. The files are at the printer, and all I'm waiting for is the Kickstarter to end. And then what I will do is send out the surveys. And once I get your information, what I'll do is put all of these books together for fulfillment, and I will have them sent out to you. So if you requested an autograph, you can do so in the surveys, and I will make sure to autograph anybody who wants their book signed. I will go out here and personally sign that book. And in addition to the John Haynes comic, you will be getting extras if you put in a pledge for a print copy. So I have to put in the order for the print and the sticker, but you're going to get the print and the sticker along with this comic. And I'm hoping to get everything out as soon as possible. One of the things I wanted to work on with this project was making sure that everything got fulfilled very quickly so that every reader got a good customer experience as related to pledging to an SJS Direct Kickstarter. So Ashura asks, will John Haynes ever look like the traditional American comic art? If I can find an artist who will work with me, who wants to do traditional American comic art, I would be glad to do that. But right now I am working with Antonio Balderi, and he has done a fantastic job with this comic. And what he said he wanted to do was he wanted to do the comic in an anime style. And I believe that's something that many people would find appealing. Now, I've heard from many readers who said that they actually love the art on this book. So I really would love to work with Antonio again on another project. But the whole thing is that it's up to the readers to go out here and pick up the books. That's how I get the funds to create the next project. Now, as related to the comic being in color, I just couldn't afford to do a comic in color. So because I couldn't afford to do the comic in color, I went out here and did it in black and white. And I wanted to, again, gauge the audience as related to whether they will continue to follow a project. But I want to do a color project in the future, but it just costs a lot more money, because when you're doing comics, you have to not only pay an artist to do the line art, you also have to pay, if you're doing color, You have to pay a colorist to do the colors, and sometimes you have to hire a flatter. So it's two other people you would have to hire, and that eats into your budget. But I'll be talking a bit more in depth about that in a second when I talk about how to put together your own comic, because a lot of people, they have been asking me, how do you go out here and put together your own indie comic? And I'm going to go in depth on that subject right now. Now, I have been wanting to do comics ever since I was 9 years old. And this year I have been blessed to finally put together my first full comic, which is John Haynes at Death's Door. And I previously put together a comic that I did with Bill Walko in digital called E-Steam No Good Deed. And over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, I've been learning a bit more about putting comics together. And the first thing that you need in order to put a comic together is you need good management skills. So in order to put together a comic, you really have to have good management skills, and those include the 4 functions of management, which is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And you really need to be in charge of your project, because if you don't run your project will run you. And if your project is running you, you're going to run into delays, you're going to run into issues, and you're going to run into problems. So you have to go out here and make sure that you keep everybody on the same page. You have to make sure that everybody is working together, and because you're the one who is ultimately in charge of getting your project out, and you have to go out here and work out all of the logistics for your project before you even put your fingers to the keyboard to write your script. Now, I had been planning on working on a comic for years, and I had to learn how to do logistics and learn how to get everybody to work together on the last 2 projects I did. The first project I did was the E-Steam No Good Deed project, where I worked with Bill Walko, and we worked together towards getting that comic out, and we got that comic on Amazon right now for 99 cents. After I got the art from Bill, I went into a letterer, and the letterer put the story together, and after that, I wound up putting the book in Blast from the Past with paper version, and I put up a digital version for everybody to be able to pick up the book for 99 cents. Now, when getting your management together, this is very important, because if you don't have a good sense of management skills, you're not going to be able to get your book out on schedule. So one of the things I had to learn was to start my planning very early on. And I started my planning for the John Haynes at Death's Door comic as I was writing the 5th book in the John Haynes series. And I was working on both the comic script and the prose story at the same time. So I had started this book way back in, I believe, late 2020, because I was getting ready to do this book for, I think, 2022, and I wanted to be ahead. So I worked on both the script and the comic, and I worked out the first draft of the book as I was working on the script of the comic. And as I was doing that, working on the script and making my plans, I started working out the logistics for getting the book out. So after I put the script together, which took me some time, I started working on the logistics of the art. Now, the logistics is just putting together the plans for how you want to get the art out, or who you want to contact to be your artist. So I was sitting there working on the script, and the script is a key thing as related to your planning, because you have to know how to make your script really flow into a comic style, because working on a script means that you have to understand something about how pages sequence. Now, every page in a comic every panel in a comic has to move the story, And you start out with your splash page, which is the opening page. And the opening page introduces us to the main character of the story and has to present what they want. And after we turn the second page, we learn why we should care. So you have to build your story up in sequence. And that's something that you do with your script, not with your artist. You have to make sure that your script is solid, because if you don't have a solid script, then your artist has absolutely nothing to work with. So I would rather spend maybe 3 to 6 months working on a script and to get it right before I go out here and send the script to the artist. So one of the things that you want to do is work on your script and make sure that your script flows from panel to panel. Now, every sequence in a comic script has to move the reader's eyes from panel to panel, and you have to make sure that every panel there is there for a reason. So that's a key part of writing your script, is making sure that your pages sequence and move from panel to panel. And writing panels is a major challenge, because you have to go out here and condense a lot of story into a series of panels on a comic page. And usually you only have about maybe 6 or possibly 7 panels per page, because if you put too many panels on a page, what's going to happen is you're going to have the reader is going to get overwhelmed, because you're going to put too many pictures on the page, and the reader is going to not be able to follow the story. So you really want to watch how many panels you put on a page, because you don't want to lose the reader as related to the sequences of panels on your comic page. And that's one of the tough challenges of putting together a comic, is making sure that you put all of your action in a sequence on a page as related to a series of panels. And I'll show you an example of that, because we have in John Haynes' at Death's Door, we have the splash page, which features the Death character, and she's looking to go out here and try to schedule some time to meet with John Haynes. And then we have the second page, where we get the introduction of Thanatos, the villain. And in that 2 to 3 pages, I have to introduce one of the main characters of the story, show what they want, why we should care, and introduce the primary conflict as related to the story. So it's a major challenge to do that, but the faster you do that, the easier it is for the reader to get into the story. And the whole thing is that it's a major challenge to get so much story into just 2 to 3 pages. Now, in the John Haynes at Death's Door prose version, that's actually 2 to 3 chapters, but I take that 2 to 3 chapters and I have to condense all of that action into just 3 pages. And that's, again, something that's you have to have a certain skill set in order to do that, because you have to make all of those panels flow from panel to panel to get the reader interested in that whole sequence. Now, when you're writing that sequence, you're not going to, again, use a whole lot of paragraphs. You're going to try to condense everything. And that is something similar to what happens with screenwriters, because a screenwriter has to use the fewest amount of words to tell the most amount of story. And with comic books, a comic book writer has to also use the fewest amount of words in order to tell the most story. And it can be a major challenge, because you have to make these panels tell enough story in order for the artist to understand what you're presenting. So you could be out here and you can, in the page 2, like I'm going to go over the script, like on that page 2, on the top panel, it says, as related to the script, it says, Death's black manicured hand swipes from her schedule to John's picture on her phone. Her train of thought is broken by a flash of light which appears across the room. So That's a panel on page 2 that is shown here at the top. And that's that's the amount of words you have to use to try to actually tell that story. So the artist has to go with that, and that's why it's important for you to be able to know how to use your words when you're condensing your words into that script, because that's all the artist has as related to telling the story. Because when everything that the artist gets is going to come from you, and if you don't tell him or her what the details are in your book, they're not going to know, and you cannot expect them to know. One of the big mistakes many aspiring comic writers make is not putting the details on the page as related to what's in the panels, and they assume that the artist is going to be able to understand. But one of the things I've learned from screenwriting is that you need to go out here and be clear and specific about what you want in the panel, because the artist isn't a mind reader. The artist only goes out here and presents what you present on the page, and what you present on the page winds up on the page of your comic. So that's why the writing is very important, because if the writing isn't good, it doesn't matter what the art looks like. If the writing isn't good, then the reader isn't going to care. Now, the other thing that a aspiring comic writer has to really think about is the limits that they have as related to writing, because you only have about 22 to 32 pages as related to a standard comic, and it's a major challenge to go out here and condense so much information into a small amount of comic in order to get the attention of the reader. And that was one of the things I was trying to do with the John Haynes at Death's Door comic. Was I was trying to show that I could go out here and condense a lot of story into a comic. And I went up to 32 pages because I wanted to add an epilogue. And I also wanted to go out here and show my style of storytelling inside the pages of this comic. So I wanted to go out here and show that I could apply my approach to storytelling to a comic and do it in a way that goes out here and condenses my style of storytelling to fit within the parameters of a comic. And those parameters, again, are working with that extremely condensed form of storytelling, working on making sure that I can get all of the aspects of my style of storytelling into a page, and getting those pages to flow from page to page and show you a book that captures the spirit of an SJS Direct story from the John Haynes series and bring that story to life in a different medium. And that's what I was trying to do with John Haynes at Death's Door, the comic. I wanted to show that I could apply the techniques for comic book storytelling to my style of writing, and show that a story from the John Haynes series could be adapted into a comic book. So that's what I was trying to do with the John Haynes comic book. And that's what I was working on as I was for the last year or so. Now, as you're working as related to the writing, again, you want that to be your core foundation, because if the writing is good, the artist will have something to work with, and the artist will be inspired to work on your comic, because there's nothing worse than having a weak script, because working with a weak script is something that's hard for an artist to work with, because if you're trying to make scenes transition from page to page, it can be very difficult to do this when the script isn't clear, when the details aren't there, and where there isn't a full story for them to be able to work with. Now, after you've gotten your script together, you can and done some edits and revisions, because this script when I did it, when I first started, it was 29 pages long, but then I made it 32 pages. And then you can go out here and start making inquiries of artists. Now, I usually like to make sure that I have a completed script before I contact an artist, because I believe in valuing the time of any artist that I work with. And usually I like to make sure that I have all of the script complete, because there's nothing that says that a person really isn't a professional unless if they have an unfinished script. I mean, this having an unfinished script is one of the worst things you could do to an artist, because they have to go out here and deal with you constantly changing things. And if you're constantly changing things, it just makes you a headache to work with. So one of the things I like to do is make sure that there's a completed script before I go out here and contact an artist, because I understand that their time is precious and they've got other people that are asking for them for their time to work on their projects. Now, when you're going out here and looking for an artist, you really want to start taking a critical look at your budget, because if you are going to go out here and make a comic, you really have to think about how much money you're going to spend, because comic artists work on a page rate, and that page rate can range anywhere from $50 for an amateur all the way up to $150 to $200 for a seasoned comic pro. And you have to really think about how much money you want to spend on your comic, because a comic, and it can again range from $50 all the way up to $150 to $200. And when you add that up and do the math at 50 by 32, or $50 by 32 is $1,600, and $150 times 32 is $4,800. So that's a lot of money for you to go and put together just for the art alone. If you start talking about bringing in a colorist, you're going to spend even more money. So you have to be prepared to spend some serious money if you're working on a comic. So if you're working on a comic and you want to work with an artist, you have, as I see it, you just need to get your money up front as related to working on this comic. And then you have to work out what budget you're going to put together as related to how much you're going to spend. Because when you're contacting an artist and making an inquiry about their page rates, you need to take a look at your budget and see how much money you're going to spend on this comic. And that's something a lot of guys, they really don't think about as related to the whole management. They don't really think about the budget. They'll write a big script, but then they won't think about, oh, that script's going to cost $7,800, $10,000, and you may not ever make that money back. But you have to really think about that after you write the script, and you have to think about how much money you're going to spend on this comic. So going out here when you're making an inquiry of your artist, you have to really take a critical look at your budget, and you have to think about how much you're going to spend, because you have to not only pay for the artist, you also have to pay for a letterer, and you also have to pay for a colorist if you are doing a color comic. And each of these guys, they cost serious money. A comic artist, again, is $150 to $50. A colorist is like $80 to $90 a page. And then you have the letterer, who is $20 to $25 a page. So a completed comic can go anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and you have to put all of that money up front before you go out here and do something like a Kickstarter. So this is something every aspiring comic creator has to think about. They have to think about the costs, and they have to assess the costs before they go out here and launch a project, because you have to count the cost, because you have to think about what you're spending, because if you don't know what you're spending, you could wind up losing a lot of money in the long term. So that's why you have to, again, think critically about how much you're spending, and you have to think about what you want to spend before you go out here and spend it. So as I'm going out here and making inquiries of artists, I'm also looking at the cost as related to a project and putting it together. So that's something everybody who wants to do a comic has to think about. They have to, after they do the script and do their inquiries of artists, think about how much they're going to spend long term. Now, I usually work out those logistics as to cost as I'm working on my script. And as I'm working on my script, I look at artists and I look at their portfolios on places like DeviantArt or Facebook's comic groups like Comic Artists Seeking Commissions. And I'm always looking at their art, and I'm looking at their pages to see how they tell their story. Now, when you're looking for an artist, you just can't look for just anyone. You have to really go and look at their pages on DeviantArt, on Instagram, on different platforms, and see if their story style and their approach to storytelling works with your characters and works with your story. That's something I did when I was working on John Haynes at Death's Door. I looked at many artists before I chose Antonio Balberi. When I saw his work on Facebook, I said it would be a great fit for the character, and it would be a great fit for the kind of story I was going to tell, which was fantasy. So when I looked at many of his pages, I was really floored by how nice they looked. And I got in touch with him in, I think, August of 2021. And I arranged a deal to let him do the art for John Haynes at Death's Door after looking at his pages. And when you're working with an artist, what you want to do is work out an agreement, work out a payment plan if they want to do that, and then let them start the project. And when you let them start the project, when your script is solid, all they have to do is just let them go out here and do their thing, and you just go on about your business. And yeah, I did have good communication with Antonio, and he did send me pages practically every week. And that's a good sign when you're working with an artist, because if they're sending you pages and you're getting pages back every week, that's really good communication. And if they're asking you about things, if that's related to the script, that means that you have good communication. So that's a thing that you're looking for when you're working with an artist, is good communication, because good communication means that you're going to be able to get this project out very quickly. And I was able to get this project out from August of 2021 to about February. So it took about 6 months or so to get the art done with the completed script. And that's fairly reasonable, because you're not going to get this project out in 30 days when you're doing an indie comic. You really want to take time to make sure that the art is of the highest quality, because the art is a representation of your story, and your art is going to make a powerful first impression. So the things you have to think about when you're doing a comic is, again, thinking about hiring a quality artist, and you want to make sure that your story is high quality, because in order to make a powerful first impression on readers, you have to go out here and make sure that your story is on point, because that's the thing that's going to leave the first impression on the reader. And that's what is done when you're out here and you make sure that your story is good. Because if you've got a strong story told on your cover and a strong interior, that's going to leave a powerful first impression on the reader, and that's going to get the reader excited about your book. So that's one of the things people have to know when you're going out here and starting to do your own comic. you have to start making sure that your management is good as related to planning everything with the logistics and going out here and working on the book, because if you don't go out here and start with a good plan and good management, you're not going to be able to put together a quality book, because again, the artist can only work with the story that you give them, and then after the artist works with your story and finishes it, then it's all on you, because after you go out here and get all of the art from the artist, everything from that point is you. And that's where what I had to do. I had to put all of this project together after I got the final art from the artist, Antonio Balderi, and I got the lettering from Gons. I got the lettering from him. It was all on me to put together the finished project, which was this print copy. So putting together the print copy, you've got to have some skills as related to Adobe products, and you need to understand how to put together a PDF. You need to understand how to put together things in Photoshop and as related to the pages. And when I was working on this book, I had originally did a lot of it in Photoshop Elements, but then my first MacBook from 2011 died, and I had to go out here and find another one to put it on. And I managed to find it and put all of this together to get this book out. So this book, you have to know Photoshop, you have to know how to use Acrobat to create the PDFs for the covers, and you also have to know Acrobat to put all the pages together. And you have to be able to put all the pages together in sequence, because that can be one of the things that leads to your whole comic falling apart, and is trying to make sure that you get all of the pages together and making sure that they fall in sequence. Because I was sitting in front of the computer at night, putting the pages together for this comic, and it was like really frustrating putting all of those pages from page 1 to 32 together in sequence. And I finally managed to get it together as related to the PDF, because I was working in Photoshop trying to get all of them to fit into the template, and I finally got them all to fit into the template for the printer. Now, that's the other part that's a major challenge, is making sure that you can get all the pages to flow together into the sequence for the PDF, and you have to make sure that they fit within the template for the printer. Now, I had 3 different printers I was looking at. I was looking at Comics Wellspring, I was looking at Kablam, and I was looking at Lulu. And as I looked at each of them and I was trying to put together the pages for the book, each of them had their different issues as related to printing. I mean, because each of them have a different template, you have to try to fit the pages in. And then after you fit the pages in the template, then you have to deal with the whole issue of going out here and formatting the book for those different printers. So that's another challenge as related to putting together your own comic, trying to make it fit within the printer's specs. And even though I was working with templates, the easiest one to work with was the Lulu one. So this is what a Lulu version of John Haynes at Death's Door looks like. And I decided to go with Lulu because of the higher quality paper and the overall fit and finish of the finished product. So I decided to go with Lulu for printing the John Haynes at Death's Door Kickstarter books, because I believe that this would give readers a better reading experience. It would give them a higher quality product, and it would give them a product that I believe would last longer than the other printed comics. So that's why I'm going with Lulu, because the quality here is very nice, and it just feels somewhat like a mix between a comic and a manga. So that's what I decided to do with this comic. And again, putting together comics is a lot of work, and creating your own indie comic is a lot of work to do. So when you're putting together an indie comic, or you see indie comics on Kickstarter, understand that there's a lot of work that goes into these comics. It starts with the concept and the script, and that script can take, again, anywhere from a seasoned writer like myself. We can put together a script maybe in 30 to 90 days. And then after that, we've got to go out here and iron out all of the sequences so that they can flow from page to page, from beginning to end, and that story can come together in a way where a reader gets a satisfying reading experience from the script. Because once you get the script right, then you can go to the artist, and as you're going to the artist and doing your inquiries, you can go out here and do your logistics. And once you do your logistics for the art and you work out a deal with an artist, you just, while you're working with them on the story, then you're looking to get to the next stage, which is working with a letterer to be able to letter the art. And a lot of people, they take letterers for granted. Some people, they want to go out here and get Photoshop to go do their lettering, and that's a major mistake. Do not go out here and get a Photoshop for a letterer, because a good letterer can do good placement on your page. And when a letterer does the placement, it can make the pages flow, and it can make it go better. So spending $20 to $25 on a letterer is money well spent, because a letterer is going to go out here and make sure that your balloons are in the right place, the fonts are flowing with the art, and the visual effects sounds are flowing with the page. And if an artist recommends a letterer, I highly recommend you go use them. Antonio Balderi recommended Gons to me to do the lettering, and his lettering works well with his art. And again, an artist knows who works well with their lettering, and an artist, if you're doing color, knows who works well with their color. So if an artist recommends somebody to go out here and do the lettering or the coloring, definitely use them, because they're going to make sure that you get a quality experience, because they want to go out here and get other work. So they're recommending people who will make their work stand out. And that's something you want, because that's going to lead to a powerful first impression on you as a reader as related to your experience. So the John Haynes at Death's Door, again, Kickstarter only has 7 hours left. And you can, again, put in your pledge to get the John Haynes at Death's Door Kickstarter, the copy of the John Haynes at Death's Door comic. You can get that on Kickstarter right now. And again, we have 7 hours to go, and I wanted to make this kind of stream to be kind of a last call and get everybody to want to pick up a copy of John Haynes at Death's Door, to give everybody a last chance to know that the comic is out here. And we are 12 pledges away from 100, which is a strong showing as related to an indie comic from a guy who just publishes books on his own. I mean, this is it's a strong showing for a comic, and I want everybody to get their chance to pick up their copy of John Haynes at Death's Door. This is a one-of-a-kind comic that I wanted to put together because I wanted to celebrate the 5th year of John Haynes in print, because before I did this comic, I had written 6 books as related to John Haynes: The Temptation of John Haynes, The Man Who Rules the World, and then I started the John Haynes series after talking to Mike Williams, the artist who does the covers for my John Haynes series books. We were talking about how there aren't many masculine Black men in media, and because there weren't many masculine Black men, a lot of young Black boys don't have role models, and young men don't have role models to teach them about Black manhood and Black masculinity. So I decided back in, I think, 2018 to start the John Haynes series with John Haynes: A Conversation with Death. And after I started it with this book just was a major surprise to me, how John Haynes: A Conversation with Death performed. I mean, I wasn't expecting John Haynes: A Conversation with Death to do well, but to my surprise, a lot of people really liked it. Some people who read it compared it to the DC character John Constantine, and others compared it to Vertigo comics. And some people saw it like it was like a possible could have been a Vertigo comic. And from there, I started doing more John Haynes stories, and which revolved around with the after the temptation of John Haynes, and showing us this world of supernatural where John Haynes is in, where he's working at this corporate hell, Morris Phillips. I decided to further expand on that world, and I decided to expand on John Haynes' part in the SJS Direct universe. So that's when I came out with Dark Succubus in 2019, and Dark Succubus performed even better than A Conversation with Death. So in between A Conversation with Death, which is this book, right? Well, it's on here, and Dark Succubus, that started the momentum for John Haynes starting to build an audience. And after that, I did two more books, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which came out of The Man Who Rules the World. And I also did Taking Care of Business, which came out of Night of the Vampires. And after that, I said, since I've done 4 John Haynes books, I wanted the 5th anniversary of the character to be something special for readers. And that's when I decided that at Death's Door, which was the second book in the Death story arc, the follow-up to A Conversation with Death, I decided to make this book a comic book. And I wanted to make it a comic book to celebrate, 1, the 5th anniversary of the John Haynes series, and 2, I wanted to go out here and see what one of my stories would look like as a comic book, and 3, I wanted to go out here and do something special for all of those readers who picked up John Haynes stories over the last 4 or 5 years. So because when you're out here and you're putting together books, you really want to give readers an experience, and I wanted to take that experience to the next level with the John Haynes at Death's Door comic. And I wanted this to be something that would get readers excited about the John Haynes character. Now, I couldn't have done this comic without the help of the Most High, 1, and I thank him above all, and 2, I couldn't have done it without a viewer who gave me a donation that enabled me to be able to pay the artist for the first 10 pages of this comic. Now, as I was looking for an artist, I was looking all over for one, but after I talked to Kevin Greville, the creator of Blue Marvel, on Facebook, he suggested to me I should go out here and find a penciler outside of the U.S., and that's when I got in touch with Antonio Balderi on Kevin Greville's advice, and that's how I was able to get this book completed. So I also thank Kevin Greville for his advice, because if it wasn't for him, this book would not be in print, because it was his advice to me in a call that basically made me look at things from a different perspective, because I was looking out here trying to chase American artists, but I couldn't find one. And I found somebody who could do the work, and Antonio Balderi took this comic, and I say he took it to the next level, because everybody I show this comic says that the art is fantastic, and everybody who sees the art is impressed by it. So if I wouldn't have been able to do this without Kevin Greville's advice, and again, I thank him for, helping me out by getting with that advice, because that's how I hired Antonio Balderi. I was looking again for an artist on Facebook Marketplace, and I found him. And again, just a fantastic artist. And I got this book put together. So after I did all of that, then I started working out the logistics for the Kickstarter, as related to the rewards, as related to the stretch goals, and related to the overall project. And I put all of that together to put this project together. So this project, even though it was only 45 days, it was over a year of planning, a year of organizing, a year of putting everything together so it would flow together for all of the customers out there who picked up and put in pledges for John Haynes at Death's Door, it took close to a year from August of 2021, and I say even before that because I was working on this in 2020 to now. So it took quite a while to put everything together as related to a Kickstarter. And I really learned a lot from this experience because I have done Kickstarters before and they haven't really gone anywhere. But this one, I learned a lot about all of the logistics and putting things together. And there's a lot, again, of management skills that are important here. And this goes back to my degree in business. I had to apply a lot of my business skills to putting this project together. And I managed to get this project put together and managed to get everything together to the point where this one really came together and everything flowed together. So after I got everything together as related to the art and everything, I wanted to go out here and maintain extreme transparency. And that's why I went out here and ordered the test copy. So I want everybody to know what they're getting. And I want everybody to know that you are going to, if you ordered a paper copy, this is what you're going to get as related to the standard version. And you'll also get this as related to the variant version. So you're going to get a high quality book for your pledge. And I'm hoping to get these out very quickly because Lulu, one of the things I like about Lulu is that they produce stuff very quickly. I mean, I ordered this last week and they got it to me this week. And I'm hoping that if I can get all of this out sooner rather than later as related to logistics, because after I put in the order for the books, I also have to put in the order for the supplies like comic bags, backing boards, and autograph pens. I have to put together all of that logistics, which is the fulfillment. And that's the third stage because it's like there's stages to the process of putting together your own indie comic. There is the planning stage, there is the creation stage, and then there is the fulfillment stage. And the fulfillment stage is something that you will have to do if you do a crowdfunding project. But if you don't do a crowdfunding project, you can take it straight to Amazon or some other platform, and they'll do the fulfillment for you. But the fulfillment stage, you have to decide whether you want to do the fulfillment or you want somebody else to go out here and do the fulfillment. So the fulfillment is a challenge because you have to, again, get your supplies ready. You have to get your packages ready to go. And you have to make sure that the customers get their packages. That's something I learned from my days doing eBay sales. And when you're doing eBay sales, you have to go out here and make sure that your customer gets their product. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years, making sure customers got their product. I made sure that I had like over 100 transactions. So I'm hoping to be able to make sure that you get all of your comics and make sure that you get tracking numbers and things like that so that you can know that your comic is coming. That's the other part of this whole project is the fulfillment. And we're getting closer to that fulfillment stage because, again, we have 7 hours to go, maybe 6 hours to go, and this Kickstarter will be over because this Kickstarter is going to end at 7 a.m. Tomorrow morning, and that will be your final chance. But I wanted to do this stream so that you can have a final call in those hours. I know in the West Coast and other parts of the world where I get viewers that it's the other day or the next day, so you've got a couple of hours to put in your pledge if you want to get your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door, and you've got a chance to go out here and pick up that book and be able to get the first John Haynes comic. So this is almost, we're getting closer and closer to the finish line, but I wanted to share my experience working on that on this project and share with you how to put together your own comic. And I'm hoping that you've learned something from this stream. Now, Rocket Man says, I already did a whole video, the video on the McDonald's worker who passed away. That's coming tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And there's a Brittany Griner one coming at noon. And I'm hoping to get a Breonna Taylor video up this Sunday. It just depends on how much time I have, because I have a lot of other work that I'm working on. I'm working on the woman crisis right now, trying to get the edits together on that book. I'm trying to get this in the second draft. I'm trying to put it together for the woman crisis, and I had to cut some chapters because they weren't really flowing into the book, or they were repeating. And as they were repeating, I said, I gotta take this chapter out because I don't need to keep repeating the same talking points over and over again. It's not a good reading experience, and some of the subjects had to be pulled. So I'm working out the woman crisis kinks right now, and I'm hoping to have that book to you guys this fall. So that's one of the fall SJS Direct 2022 books I'm working on is The Woman Crisis, and I'm hoping to get that book together so that it'll be ready for this fall. And now I've got other videos I'm, again, planning on working on. I want to do one on Rob Liefeld, who was talking about his issues with millennials and their entitlement issues and how he couldn't work with them. And that's a video I'm planning on doing next week because I do comic videos. So that's a video I'm working on right now. And I'm working out how I want to talk about that topic, but that's a video that I have planned that I want to do next week. I'm hoping that I can do it, but the Breonna Taylor, I want to do that one on Sunday, and I want to do, but what's coming is Brittany Griner at 12 p.m. So that video is coming at 12 o'clock. The McDonald's worker, a follow-up on that is coming at 8 o'clock on Saturday. So if you guys like to know when the next videos are coming, they're coming. But I wanted to do this live stream to try to share some of the techniques that I use in putting together my own comic, because a couple of viewers requested that video and they wanted to know how they could put together their own comic. But you have to make sure you have your management skills there. You have to have a good plan. You have to have a good budget. You have to have really good organizational skills and good communication skills. And you have to be able to try to build relationships with your artists and your writers and people that you're working with. And you have to show them respect and be very professional with them. And part of being professional is understanding the value of their time, because they are taking time out to work on your project. They could easily go out here and do commissions for some serious money, but they're taking time to work on your page, and you have to show gratitude to them for putting that time in on your page. So really show a lot of respect for all of the people who are working with you and treat them with respect, and also be professional when you're communicating with them. And remember, this is a person too, and that this project means something to them, because this is something that they can put in their portfolio once it's finished. Because when you do a project like this, John Haynes at Death's Door, you want to make sure that the project is something that they can put in their portfolio, because if your projects are good and you can show that you have good relationships with people, this builds your reputation, this builds your image, and it enables not only them to get work, it also enables you to get work, because if you can show that you can put together quality professional work, other people will see your work and then want to hire you to go out here and do work for them. So that's another aspect of when you work on an indie comic. Understand that the finished product, is a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your work, and it's also a reflection of your professional reputation. That's why you want to make sure that you go out here and maintain good relationships with people. And you also want to make sure that you go out here and be able to fulfill very quickly, because that's also how you build your reputation. And that's what I want to do once the Kickstarter finishes, start working on the fulfillment and making sure that I can get these comics out so that people won't get burned. Like I heard from many guys as related to Kickstarters, I've heard the horror stories about people never getting their comics, people waiting 6 months to a year to get a comic. And I don't want that to be an experience, for an SJS Direct customer. I don't want you to be sitting there waiting 6 months to a year for a book. I want you to be able to make sure that you get a high quality book and a high quality experience. And because that's how you build your reputation. And if you build a positive reputation, then you can get the customer anticipating the next book. Now, people are anticipating the next SJS Direct book. Some people will be asking me about when the next John Haynes is coming out, or when the next ISIS or E-Steam is coming out. And this is again a positive reaction. And I have people who give these books to their kids. And with John Haynes at Death's Door, you don't have to worry about any sort of R-rated content. Everything in here is basically PG-13. And you could easily give this book to your child and feel safe about giving this book to your child. Most SJS Direct content I create is family friendly, and it's something that you can again easily give to your children and not feel scared about giving it to your children, about them being exposed to inappropriate conduct. And everything, and again, in an SJS Direct book, I've had people give these books to their children and give the books to the children, and the children want more of them. So when I go out here and I create content, I create it so that you can go out here and feel safe about giving an SJS Direct book to your kids, and that they will go out here and feel comfortable with it. Anything in here, anything that was in a 1980s or a 1990s comic is the same as an SJS Direct comic. And that's what the kind of content I want to give to you with John Haynes at Death's Door. And again, you only have 7 hours or 6 hours at this point to put in your pledge and get your copy. So I'm hoping that you put in your pledge to get your copy. And I'm hoping that you will go out here and after you read this comic, go out here and pick up more SJS Direct content. So I've got to get back to work on the woman crisis, so I'm going to get ready to wrap up this stream. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this stream, and I want to thank everybody who put in a pledge for the John Haynes at Death's Door Kickstarter. We're getting closer to the end, and if you haven't put in your pledge for John Haynes at Death's Door, you have until about 7 a.m. to put in that pledge Eastern Time, so there's no time to lose. So put in that pledge, get that copy of John Haynes at Death's Door, and get the first SJS Direct comment. So I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream, and maybe I'll possibly talk about some topic that's related to relationships. Maybe I'll talk about, why it's important for a guy not to fight over a woman. That might be the topic for next week's stream. But I hope you will be there for next week's stream. Everybody have a good evening, and everybody have a good night.